What the f is a Sonic?
Lights, camera, action.
Is no longer something that people ask, because you know what? Sonic 1 actually did well. In the 90s, this rat actually did well and succeeded. Crazy, right? We can't have anything now in this day and age as Sonic fans. But in the 90s, this guy was selling millions. He was making Sega bank. So what did they do after Sonic 1? They created a sequel that was even better in almost every single way. After the incredible success of Sonic the Hedgehog on the Sega Genesis, Sega had to create a sequel for their new mascot. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 would come to fruition in November of 1992 and would break the record for the fastest selling game of all time, grossing $450 million. How did Sonic 2 do this? What was so amazing about it? And why is this game still recognized as one of the best 2D platformers of all time? Today, we find out how Sonic 2 re-revolutionized Sonic again. From my previous video, Sonic 1 Revolutionized Video Gaming, I explained why Sonic was so radical to the video game market and how he saved the entirety of the video game market from Nintendo. But what makes Sonic 2 so gosh dang revolutionary that it changed Sonic himself? There are so many different aspects that Sonic 2 fixed about Sonic, and let's get into that, starting off with the gameplay of Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Sonic 1 was loved for two reasons. Number one, this game heavily relied on momentum, which made the game feel smooth and buttery. And number two, the speed of this game, which is exactly why Sonic Team decided to crank up the speed for Sonic 2. The biggest complaint people had with Sonic 1 was there were in-between levels that slowed down the pace and made Sonic feel, well, slow. And Sonic is all about speed, so instead of adding those levels again, Sega and Sonic Team instead created all the time fast levels that would only briefly stop you for a little platforming section before blasting you off at full speed once again. And lo and behold, this succeeded so well. The gameplay of Sonic 2 is so much better and so much more fun than Sonic 1 with that simple addition alone. And there are so many other additions that make this game so good. And one of those very notable additions is one of the most iconic moves Sonic now has, the Spin Dash. Instead of building up speed and, it being very slow, Sonic 2's Spin Dash allows you to rocket to max speed instantly. All you have to do is click down on the D-pad and jump, and Sonic will start spinning in a ball quickly. Release and you'll blast off at maximum speed. This was a true game changer when it came to Sonic the Hedgehog 2 and the Sonic the Hedgehog gameplay in general, as now you literally couldn't go slow. Every single time you did, you could just stop and wind up a Spin Dash and rocket yourself off at max speed once again. So this new addition complemented that fast level design that I mentioned before even more, allowing for a more streamlined and fast gameplay experience. More things were added to Sonic the Hedgehog 2 that would improve the gameplay of said game. For example, now there were only 2 acts instead of 3, making the zones no longer overstay their welcome and not being a slog to get through. At the end of Act 2, you would face the boss of the zone, and they would be quick encounters just like Sonic 1. But perhaps the most important addition to Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was the introduction of a new character, one of the most important characters in the Sonic franchise in fact, Sonic's two-tailed sidekick, Miles Tails Prower. Depending on which manual you got from which region, the story of Tails varies, but it usually goes along the lines of this. As a young kid, Tails was bullied extremely for having 2 tails. Everyone called him a freak and a weirdo, and the poor kid could not have a break. So, one time when he was running along exploring, he saw Sonic, and he saw how cool Sonic was. So he decided to follow him, and he met Sonic, and they became quick friends. Sonic, unlike the bullies, decided to show Tails that his tails can be used for something much greater. And he was the one who gave Tails the ability to fly. or at least given the idea that he should use his tails to fly. And then Tails would become just as formidable as Sonic. Another incredibly important addition was the fact that the amount of zones doubled. Now that each zone was consisted of 2 acts instead of 3, Sonic Team decided to give us, the players, a load more zones. And we got a whopping 12 zones this time around. And each zone would be structured in a beautiful way. Unlike Sonic 1, where when you went from one zone to another, the zone would become more decrepit and less full of life, Sonic 2 juxtaposes its zones instantly, going from Emerald Hill, a beautiful and lush environment, to Chemical Plant, an overrun and decrepit factory made by Dr. Robotnik. From Aquatic Ruin to Casino Night. All the time the zone would be juxtaposed from a beautiful and lush environment to a zone that is decrepit and metallic, showing the signs of Dr. Robotnik's takeover. But one more extremely important addition was made to Sonic 2. Now there are 7 emeralds to collect instead of 6. And when getting all 7 Chaos Emeralds through a much better special stage than its predecessor, you would unlock Super Sonic. Now we all know the parallels between Dragon Ball and Sonic, and this is the biggest one. There are 7 Dragon Balls and 7 Chaos Emeralds. Both characters go yellow and have spiky hair. And it's true, Super Sonic is definitely inspired by Super Saiyan. But I gotta say, Super Sonic is an incredible addition to Sonic the Hedgehog. You are rewarded for going out of your way and collecting all 7 emeralds. And instead of a dinky ending at the end of the game, this time you are rewarded with God mode. You cannot be touched, you cannot be killed, and the only thing that happens is your rings deplete. Once you're out of rings, you are vulnerable, which is why you have to hold on as many rings as you can while in Super Sonic to have your form remain longer. And while the story of Sonic the Hedgehog doesn't do anything too grand, it's still your average classic Sonic story. Sonic and Tails embark on a trip to stop Dr. Robotnik's brand new weapon, the Death Egg. And yeah, that's pretty much it actually. The last thing that Sonic the Hedgehog 2 sort of introduced was a sort of multiplayer. In the menu, you could play a 1v1. And in the main game, you can have 2 people play as Sonic and Tails. Though the camera only follows Sonic, so if you're playing as Tails, too bad, it'll only follow Sonic. But just because Sonic 2 introduced new things like the spin dash and better level design, doesn't mean that this game didn't take a lot and built off from its predecessor. That same loving momentum that we had in Sonic 1 is still kept in full force in Sonic 2. And thank God for that, because this still creates fun and captivating gameplay. The same can be said with the music of Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Masato Nakamura would return for the soundtrack of the game once more and deliver an amazing soundtrack. And just like its predecessors, the ad campaigns for Sonic the Hedgehog 2 were vicious. Now Nintendo knew they had a serious competitor against them, and while they did try to fire back, Nintendo could not return the savage ads that Sega had. Just like the previous games, it was all about Sega being for cool kids and Nintendo being for nerds. And just like the previous game, it worked extremely in their favors. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 would become perhaps the biggest commercial success Sega has ever had, grossing $450 million in the first week of its existence, and selling a total of 12 million units in its entire lifetime. While this video game did not sell as good as its predecessor, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 left a mark much bigger than Sonic 1. In fact, it even introduced a new medium for the video game industry. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 released on a Tuesday, and after many companies saw the success of the game, many other companies would shift their release dates to Tuesdays, and lo and behold, their games would also succeed incredibly well. And yeah, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 just absolutely shaped 1992 as a year. It was loved, critically acclaimed, people have such fond memories of it, and then overall is an amazing game. And Sonic 2 really did revolutionize Sonic as a brand, launching it into a brand new era of everyone's favorite blue hedgehog. In the end, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 had a huge impact on the video game market and Sonic as a brand. It launched Sonic into a new era, making the gameplay of the franchise even more fun and addicting, and it even set a new medium of when video games should be sold. It broke records when it came to sales, and Sonic the Hedgehog 2 really did revolutionize the video game industry again, only a year after the release of the original Sonic the Hedgehog. But that's it for today's video, guys. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you are in the world, and I'll see you guys all next time. Ciao.